Captain Darren Halt adjusted the collar of his uniform as the shuttle descended toward the shimmering world of Drexia, the capital of the Saravari Empire. The sky below was a strange green-blue, and towering crystal spires sparkled like giant glass towers stretching to the clouds. Hayes' heart pounded with both awe and anxiety. This was humanity's first official contact with the Saravari, an ancient alien race said to be older than most known civilizations, and Earth had sent him a decorated soldier turned diplomat for reasons even he didn't fully understand. He glanced down at the undershirt he wore beneath the stiff uniform. A faded, wrinkled t-shirt from his grandfather's service days. It bore a symbol he always found comforting: a proud eagle clutching arrows in a branch, wings outstretched. He had no idea it would change everything. The shuttle docked in silence, and moments later, Darren was led through wide halls of shimmering light and moving walls. Fairy guards, tall and silver-skinned with glowing blue eyes, flanked him, their faces unreadable. The atmosphere inside the palace was charged, as if electricity hummed just beneath the surface. At last, massive doors opened into a grand chamber lined with stone pillars carved with alien symbols. On the throne at the far end sat Queen Axero, her form both beautiful and unnerving. Humanoid, yet clearly not human, her silver skin gleaming beneath the lights, her head adorned with a crown that floated just above her scalp like it was held by invisible threads. She regarded Darren with sharp, intelligent eyes, saying nothing at first. The crowd of nobles around her watched in silence, murmurs echoing like whispers through mist. Darren bowed slightly as instructed and took 2 steps forward. The queen stood, her eyes narrowed not in anger, but in something stranger, something deeper. Her gaze slowly dropped, not to his face, but to his chest. Darren glanced down, confused, realizing his uniform jacket had opened slightly, revealing the top half of his old shirt and the eagle insignia beneath. A sudden hush fell over the court. The queen's expression froze, her hands trembling slightly. One of her ministers called out, but she raised her hand, silencing the room. She walked down the steps of her throne slowly, each footstep echoing like thunder in the silence. Darren didn't dare move. Darren stopped just before him, staring at the symbol as if seeing a ghost. Her lips parted, and in a voice filled with awe and disbelief, she spoke in her native tongue, which was instantly translated in Darren's earpiece. The flame has returned. Before Darren could ask what she meant, she reached up and removed her crown. Gasps erupted from the nobles. The crown, delicate loop of psionic crystal, said, to bind the mind of the ruler to the heart of the empire, was never to be removed except in death or surrender. But she did it slowly, deliberately, and placed it on the floor before Darren's feet. Then she knelt. The most powerful ruler in the known galaxy was on her knees before a human she had never met. All because of an old Earth emblem printed on a shirt. Darren's blood ran cold. His translator buzzed with panicked, overlapping voices as the court exploded in chaos. Advisors ran forward. Guards stepped closer, unsure whether to protect their queen or seize the stranger. Darren remained perfectly still. He didn't know what was happening, but instinct told him this moment was important, too important to speak, too dangerous to act. The queen lifted her eyes to his again. Her voice was calm now, almost reverent. "You wear the mark of the flame wielders," she said. "The ones who came before, the ones who shaped us." Darren blinked. I don't know what you're talking about," he whispered, though his translator didn't carry his words to the rest of the court. "K." The queen nodded slowly, as if that confirmed everything. "You do not remember, K, but your kind always forgets and always returns." She stood and turned to her court. "This man is not a visitor. He is an heir." At that moment, Darren realized he wasn't just representing Earth. He had stepped into the heart of an ancient story, a legend so old that even its name had been buried in time, and somehow he was now part of it. The queen ordered everyone to stand down, her voice slicing through the confusion like a blade. The ministers backed away. A path cleared. She motioned for Darren to follow her. Without thinking, he obeyed. The crowd watched them disappear into the shadows of a side hall, murmuring stories and fears that hadn't been spoken aloud in generations. Darren's head spun. How could a simple shirt, a relic from a forgotten country on a single world, cause a queen to surrender her crown? And what did she mean by flame wielders? As the chamber doors closed behind him, he knew one thing for certain. This was not just first contact. This was something older, something hidden, and now that it had begun, there was no turning back. Darren walked beside Queen Axelrod through a long, silent hallway lit by a soft glow from the walls themselves. Unsure of where she was taking him or why he felt like the floor beneath him might vanish at any second. But the way she looked at him, both respectful and frightened, told him everything had changed, and not just for him, but maybe for all of Earth. The queen spoke little as they walked, only saying they must see the truth. And Darren followed, heart pounding with confusion and unease. His thoughts spun around the strange moment in the throne room when she had dropped to her knees, after seeing the eagle on his shirt, an old American symbol from Earth's past. Once proud, and now nearly forgotten, yet to her, it was something else, something powerful, and the fear in the eyes of her people had been real. Now they reached a set of giant doors, marked with golden lines, shaped like fire, stars, and strange, ancient writing that shimmered faintly when he looked at them. K and two Saravari guards moved aside without a word as Axelrod placed her hand on the door, which opened silently to reveal a massive chamber filled with air that felt heavy with memory. The walls were not stone or metal, but something older, something smooth and dark like black glass, carved with deep lines and images that looked almost human figures in armor, carrying weapons of light, standing above kneeling beings that looked very much like the Saravari. Darren stepped inside slowly, his boots echoing on the stone floor as Axelrod said, "This is the vault of remembrance," and her voice trembled just slightly. She motioned for him to approach the center of the room, where a tall pillar rose up from the floor, its surface cracked and weathered, but still showing a single glowing mark at the top. The eagle, his eagle, exactly like the one on his shirt, carved in precise detail, though worn by time. Darren stared at it, chills crawling down his spine, and turned to her with a whisper, "What is this?" And the queen answered, "Proof that your kind was here, long before my people walked the stars," explaining that long ago, before Saravari history began, there were stories passed down through dreams and sacred scripts of beings who came from fire and stars, who shaped the galaxy with unmatched power, and who vanished without explanation, leaving behind only ruins, warnings, and the memory of the eagle that became a symbol of obedience and fear. Her people believed these flame wielders, as they were called, would return one day, and that their return would mark the end of Saravari rule, its rebirth under Terran command. Darren's breath caught. He wasn't prepared for this, for ancient myths declaring him some kind of descendant of forgotten gods. But Axelrod looked at him with calm certainty, saying, "The symbol you wear is more than art. It is the mark of our old masters, the ones who broke us and built us again." And Darren suddenly remembered the ship AI back home, how Earth's own records were filled with missing history, strange ruins on Mars and Titan that no one could explain. And now it seemed Earth's past was more than lost, it had been erased. The queen led him along the mural-covered walls, showing scenes of humans. Yes, humans marching alongside machines, defeating vast fleets, and standing over surrendering alien races. And every single scene had one thing in common: the eagle, always glowing, always above them. You are not just a visitor, Axelrod said, her voice distant. You are an heir to those who made us kneel. And Darren didn't know what to say, because nothing in his life had prepared him for this. Not his training, not the medals, not the lectures on diplomacy. This wasn't politics. This was legacy. But outside, the news of the Queen's Act had already spread. And across the empire, some knelt in fear, others whispered of rebellion, and a few began to prepare for something darker, something violent. Darren didn't know it yet, but the moment the Queen knelt, she had triggered an old prophecy. And there were those who would do anything to stop it from coming true, even if it meant silencing him forever. For now, though, she offered him a gift, a small device shaped like a crystal shard that hummed gently in his palm, which she said would unlock deeper truths in time when he was ready. And Darren accepted it, unsure what ready even meant. Anymore, as they returned to the upper levels of the palace, he passed through crowds of Saravari who stared at him with wide eyes, some in fear, others in wonder, and he heard whispers behind him, flame wielder, heir, subjugator, none of which made him feel like a hero, only like a man who had stumbled into a story that began long before his birth. That night, alone in the room given to him, he stared at the t-shirt he had worn under his uniform, still showing the faded eagle, and asked himself the question he'd been avoiding all day. What if this is true? And for the first time since stepping foot on Phyrexia, Darren felt the weight of it all, the terrible, quiet truth that maybe humanity hadn't just returned to the stars. Maybe it had come back to claim something it once owned. The next morning, Darren stood on a narrow platform that hovered above a deep chasm of red mist, staring at a sealed gate carved into the side of the mountain known as the spine of Phyrexia, its walls marked with ancient fire symbols that pulsed faintly in the early light. The Queen had summoned him before sunrise, saying only, "It is time you see where the truth is kept." And now, with a team of silent Saravari monks escorting them, she led him toward a place called the Archives of Stone and Fire, said to be older than the palace itself, older even than Saravari civilization. Place built not by her people, but by the ones who came before, by the humans, if the myths were right. As the gate opened with a deep, rumbling groan, heat poured from within, not dangerous, but heavy. It's like stepping into the breath of something ancient and alive. And Darren followed the Queen into the darkness, lit only by glowing veins of orange light that crawled across the walls like lava, frozen in mid-flow. The air smelled of ash and time, and each step echoed like it was being recorded by the stones themselves. Soon the walls widened into a massive chamber so large it seemed to have its own sky, filled with towering slabs of black rock, shaped like books, each one humming softly with unread energy. And the Queen explained that these were memory stones, devices that stored not just words, but visions, voices, entire moments from the past. And only those with the blood of the builders could unlock them. Darren frowned, asking, "And you think I can?" And the Queen nodded, without doubt, her eyes fixed on the central pillar of the room, where a single slab stood apart, taller than the rest, and carved with a symbol that made Darren's breath stop. The eagle, again, only this time surrounded by stars and fire, its wings wrapped around a world. He reached out without thinking, hand brushing the surface, and the moment his fingers touched the stone, the room lit up with a deep red light and a low sound like a distant engine roaring to life after centuries of sleep. The monks gasped, stepping back, and Queen Axelrod whispered, "It is true, then." As the slab cracked down the middle and opened, revealing a hidden space inside, a chamber within the archive chamber, where images began to form in the air, holograms of armored humans walking through alien cities, of warships shaped like daggers splitting the skies, of alien races kneeling before the bearers of flame and thunder. Darren stood frozen as the images played, each one showing humans in control, not just present in the galaxy, but ruling it. Their weapons strange and glowing, their eyes cold with purpose. The Saravari were there too, younger and smaller, led in chains, then later trained, finally serving the humans as soldiers and workers under a flag that bore the eagle and a ring of stars, Earth's symbol for ancient, changed by time. Then came the fall, shown in flashes of light and fire. A rebellion of species led by unknown forces, the Terran cities burning, their machines turning to dust, and the eagle falling into darkness. Darren felt sick, not just from the violence, but from the weight of it. These weren't just stories. They were memories. His ancestors, maybe his very bloodline, and the stone had responded to him because he was part of it. Your kind ruled the stars, Axelrel said softly, and we remember their fire. Even when they forgot it, and Darren didn't know if he felt proud or horrified. Because this wasn't just history, it was conquest, domination, the kind Earth had always claimed to rise above, but now the truth burned in front of him, written in stone and fire. The Queen led him deeper into the hidden chamber, where a single chair sat at the center of a circular platform, smooth and silver, unlike anything else in the room. She called it the Throne of Flame, a command seat from the time of the Flame Wielders, and it had not worked for any Saravari in thousands of years. She asked him to sit, and though his heart raced with fear, Darren obeyed, lowering himself into the chair, which instantly lit up beneath him, its panels glowing gold and red, and a voice spoke not Saravari, but English, saying, "Command. Recognized. Genetic signature. Terran Prime. Access granted." The room shook, lights flared, and from the walls, more visions emerged, blueprints of weapons, ship designs, command protocols, all waiting for orders. Darren shot to his feet, overwhelmed, shouting, "Turn it off!" And the voice obeyed instantly, going silent, and the light faded, but the damage was done. Queen Axelrel had seen it, the monks had seen it, and now the truth could not be hidden. Darren Holt, explorer from a quiet little blue planet, had just unlocked a legacy of power and fire that once ruled empires, and he had done it with nothing more than the blood in his veins and a forgotten symbol on his shirt. As they left the archives, the Queen walked beside him in silence, but he could feel the change in the air, the tension of knowing the past was no longer buried. She finally said, "Some will want to follow you, others will try to stop you, but none will ignore you now." And Darren believed her, because the fire that once ruled the stars had not died, it had merely waited, hidden in stone, and now it had found its heir. The days after Darren activated the Throne of Flame passed like a storm building in the distant calm on the surface, what with the pressure that grew heavier by the hour. And though Queen Axelrel continued to act with grace and calm, even Darren could sense that something had shifted deep within the Saravari Empire. The Queen's court was quieter now, her ministers more cautious, some avoiding Darren's gaze altogether, while others watched him with thinly hidden fear. And in the dark corners of the palace, he felt eyes on him, guards who no longer saluted, whispers that fell silent when he entered, and a silence that felt sharper than any words. It was during a private meal in the Eastern Wing that Axelrel finally spoke of the danger they faced, her voice low and steady as she explained that not all Saravari believed in the legends, and many feared what his return might mean, not just for their future, but for their control. She warned him of the Shadow Circle, an old faction within the nobility that served not the crown, but the memory of power. And they believed the Terran bloodline must never rise again, for it would break the balance that kept the empire whole. Darren listened, the food forgotten, as Axelrel spoke of assassination attempts in the past, secret wars fought in the alleys of stars, and of an old saying whispered in dark places. When the flame returns, blood must follow. That night, Darren checked his room for listening devices and slept with one eye open. And it was a good thing he did, because just before dawn, a soft hiss filled the air gas, invisible, scentless. Meant to put him into a sleep he would never wake from, but Darren had already sealed his breathing mask, and when the door creaked open, he was ready. Two shadows slipped in, fast and silent, blades in hand, their skin dark like scorched metal and marked with strange tattoos that glowed faintly in the dark. Darren waited until they were close, then struck, using the basic combat training that had once earned him respect back home. Not perfect, but enough. The first assassin went down with a broken wrist, the second with a blow to the throat that left her gasping. And by the time the guards arrived, Darren was standing in the middle of his room with blood on his shirt and fury in his eyes. Exarel came within minutes, her expression unreadable as she looked at the bodies, then at Darren, and simply said, "It begins," confirming what he had feared. The shadow circle had moved from whispers to action. Now, no place was safe, not even the palace, and the queen decided to move Darren to a hidden chamber beneath the Hall of Stars, guarded by ancient machines that only obeyed the royal bloodline. In that cold, stone room, lit by pulsing blue lights and old glyphs, Darren found himself trapped between the weight of the past and the threats of the present. And every hour brought more new ships going dark on the edges of Sci-Fi space. Coded messages intercepted with references to purging the flame. And even minor lords beginning to pull their support from the queen's rule. Still, not all was lost, because some Sci-Fi, especially among the younger generation, began to see Darren as more than a danger. To them, he was a symbol of change, of ancient power, returning not to rule, but to restore balance. And small crowds gathered in secret to speak his name and wear the eagle as a hidden badge, even carving it into walls when no one was watching. Darren didn't know what to do with this strange support, but he knew he couldn't hide forever, so he asked Axarel to let him speak not to the court, to the people, through a secure broadcast. She hesitated, warning him that it might expose him further, but in the end, she agreed. And together, they recorded a message that was simple and honest. Darren spoke not as a ruler, not as a warrior, but as a man caught in something far bigger than himself, admitting he did not ask for this role, did not even understand all of it, but promising to seek peace, truth, and the unity of both Earth and the stars. The message spread fast, faster than the queen expected, and, in places far from Threxia, people began to listen to him. That made the Shadow Circle panic. One of their agents, a masked lord named Kareth Soul, moved in secret to strike a final blow, gathering rogue ships, mercenaries, stolen technology from the ruins of old Terran outposts, planning to destroy the queen and Darren in one swift attack before they could rise further. Word of this came from a spy loyal to the throne, and when Axarel heard it, she knew they had only days before the storm arrived. She summoned Darren and told him everything, and though fear gnawed at his chest, Darren felt something else too, a fire in his veins, not of violence, but of duty. Had not come to Threxia to rule, but he could not stand by while others died. Because of him, he asked to see the throne aflame again, and with the queen at his side, he sat upon it one more time, letting the ancient systems awaken once more. This time, he saw more than visions. He saw commands, battle maps, warnings, and even old Terran weapons hidden across space. "What should I do?" he whispered, and the chair answered in that calm, ancient voice. "Protect the flame. Guide the stars." Darren clenched his fists, not with anger, but with purpose, because the shadows were moving now. And if he was truly the heir to a forgotten power, he would not let that power fall to darkness again. The skies above Threxia turned dark as the first ships of Karat Sol's rogue fleet pierced the clouds. their shapes like claws, reaching for the palace below. And inside the Hall of Stars, Darren stood before a group of Saravari warriors. Their armor black and gold, eyes uncertain, waiting for orders from a man who just days ago had been nothing more than a guest, but now stood as the living echo of an empire they thought lost. Queen Akril stood beside him, her voice calm but firm as she declared, "The flame rises not to conquer, but to protect." And those words gave Darren the strength to face the moment that had come faster than anyone expected. Kareth's soul had made his move, surrounding the planet with a stolen fleet of old Terran warships. Somehow reactivated and under his command, and worse, he had begun broadcasting messages to the outer systems, declaring that the Queen had betrayed Saravari purity by bowing to a Terran relic, calling Darren a false god and a danger to the balance of the stars, and promising a new order with him as its rightful leader. Panic spread across the capital as explosions rang out at key defense towers. Saboteurs hiding among the Queen's own staff, but Ixaro had prepared well. And Darren had spent the last 2 days studying the ancient systems through the throne of flame, learning how to guide the old machines, how to activate the defenses buried deep beneath the city's bones. Now, with the help of the Queen's engineers, he activated the city's old Terran shield, a bubble of golden light that covered the palace and its nearby districts, glowing like a sun reborn. In the moment it rose, the rogue ships paused, startled because no Saravari alive had ever seen such technology used in action, and none had believed it still worked. The people watched from their windows, from rooftops and tunnels, as the eagle crest glowed in the sky, cast by a satellite Darren had reactivated, and, for the first time, many of them saw the truth with their own eyes. The flame had returned, not in legend, but in flesh. Still, Kareth's soul was not afraid. He launched a ground assault next, sending squads of enhanced mercenaries through the underground tunnels. But Darren, guided by old maps only the throne could read, sealed the lower passages with automated gates that had not opened in centuries. At the Queen's side, Darren gave his first real command to Saravari forces, directing elite guards to retake the eastern tower, where Kareth's men had planted a device meant to bring down the shield. The fighting was brutal, close, and fast, but the Queen's warriors fought with renewed strength under Darren's signal. And they succeeded, barely disabling the bomb and capturing one of the Shadow Circle's commanders. Spoke with trembling lips as he admitted that Kareth's plan was bigger than just this city. He had allies on 3 other Saravari worlds, all planning to rise if Drexia fell. Darren knew then that this was no longer about survival, which is about reclaiming something greater, not just for Earth, but for everyone who still believed in peace and purpose. He asked the Queen to open a connection to the entire empire, a direct message sent through the ancient beacon network, and when she agreed, Darren stood before the lance in the throne room, the image of the eagle behind him, and he spoke to every world, every outpost, every soldier, using words not of a ruler, but of a man who understood fear, who had felt lost and unsure, but had seen what unity could be. He told them that power meant nothing without honor, that fear built nothing, and that the flame, their shared legacy, belonged not to one species, but to all who would protect it. Case spread faster than Kareth's lies, and across the stars, small fires of rebellion against the Shadow Circle began to flicker, not just from humans, but from Saravari, from allied races, from those tired of secrets and fear. Back on Drexia, Kareth made his final move, dropping from orbit with his elite guard, aiming to reach the throne room and kill Darren with his own hands. But Darren was waiting, wearing not armor, but the same shirt he had worn when this all began, the one with the eagle. The throne responded to his presence, casting a protective aura that shimmered like flame. And when Kareth stormed in, eyes wild and sword raised, Darren did not flinch, because now he understood who he was. Not a conqueror, but a keeper. The fight was quick, but fierce, and it ended when Darren used a pulse command from the throne to disable Kareth's suit, locking him in place with old Terran technology that only he could access. As the traitor was taken away, the skies cleared, and ships loyal to the Queen and the Flame moved into position, surrounding the remaining rogue fleet, forcing surrender without more bloodshed. When the dust settled, Darren stepped outside the palace. The people of Phyrexia waiting in silence, and Axarel turned to him, removed her crown again, but this time she did not kneel. Instead, she placed the crown on the flame pedestal beside the ancient throne and said, "We follow not a king, but a light returned." And the people cheered not with fear, but with hope. Darren looked up at the sky, the stars above like open doors, and knew the journey was not over, but just beginning, for the flame had risen. And now the galaxy would feel its warmth again. The day after Kareth Saul's defeat was calm, but it was the kind of calm that held 1,000 questions just below the surface, like the quiet before a wave crashes. Darren stood alone on the high balcony of the throne tower, looking at the stars above Phyrexia, each one glowing like a watchful eye. And though the fires had been put out and the city was safe, he knew that peace never lasted on its own. It had to be defended, guided, and earned every day. Queen Axwell had stepped back from her role as ruler, choosing instead to become the Speaker of Unity, a new title she made for herself, and one that allowed her to help Darren without forcing him into a crown he did not ask for. Even now, she worked to bring leaders from the outer systems to Phyrexia for a great council, where Darren would decide the fate of the Empire not as a king, but as something older, something forgotten and feared, the Flame Bearer, the last voice of the Terran line. Darren didn't know if he was ready, but the Throne of Flame kept showing him visions, some of them beautiful, others terrifying, and all of them heavy with Miniga, galaxy torn between old power and new hope, a future where unity was possible, but fragile, like a bridge made of glass stretched across fire. The Queen's engineers had repaired the old flame network, an array of satellites and ancient data streams that connected the lost colonies of the Terran Empire, and now messages poured into, some calling for help, others offering support, and a few threatening wars. Darren dared to bring Earth's legacy back into the stars. It was clear that Kareth's soul had only been one head of the shadow circle. Many others still moved in secret, hiding behind trade guilds, noble families, and corrupted science groups that saw the flame not as history, but as a weapon. Darren met daily with scholars, warriors, diplomats, and even enemies who had changed sides after seeing him unlock the throne's true light. And each conversation felt like walking a wire above a pit. Every choice mattered now, and every word could bring peace or destruction. But Darren did not stand alone. Beside him were not just Akril and her loyal guards, but new allies, a former Shadow Circle tactician who had chosen truth over fear, a group of human colonists who had been hiding for generations on the ice moon of Koravai, and even a young Saravari engineer who designed a way to use the flame signal as a protective beacon for weaker systems. Together, they formed the Circle of Flame, not a ruling council, but a team of builders, defenders, thinkers who would help guide the Empire into what Darren called the Open Age. As the day of the council came, ships from across the galaxy arrived, their flags strange and beautiful, their leaders cautious but curious, and the Grand Hall of Stars was filled with voices from 100 worlds. Darren stood at the center, wearing no crown, no armor, just a simple black jacket with the eagle symbol now known across the stars. He spoke slowly, clearly, telling the story of Earth, of war and silence, of the flame's fall and its return. And then he asked not for power, but for partnerships. He offered the flame as a shared light, not a weapon, and promised that no world would be forced to bow. But each would be welcomed if they chose peace, respect, and truth. Silence followed his words for a long moment, and then, one by one, leaders stood and placed their banners in the circle around him, some trembling, some bold, but all choosing unity over fear. However, just as the last banner was placed, an alarm rang out. One of the Flame Network's outer satellites had gone dark. Its last message, a warning. Something ancient moves. Darren turned to Axarel, who looked as shaken as he felt, and rushed to the throne room, where the system displayed strange readings, deep space signals, not Saravari or Turin, but older than both. The throne pulsed with heat as it tried to process the incoming data, and Darren saw flashes of strange ships, strange minds, and an old memory locked in the deepest files of an enemy so powerful, even the first flame had only delayed it. The ancient threat had not been destroyed, only pushed back, and now that the flame had risen again, it had been seen, felt, and awakened. Panic rippled through the newly formed circle of flame, but Darren stood firm, even as fear pressed down on him, because now he knew his true purpose was not just to unite the scattered worlds, but to prepare them for what came next. The crown of stars was not a title, it was a burden, a map, a shield, and a promise. And Darren would carry it, not because he wanted to, but because no one else could. And as the stars shimmered above and distant shadows moved closer, he spoke. One more time, not to the court, but to the galaxy. The flame does not bow. It burns, and together we will be its light.